Here's where the story gets really interesting, because nobody knows who made it. There are three main suspects, all connected in a web that stretches from ancient Greece to Babylon. Suspect 1, Archimedes, the greatest engineer of the ancient world. Around 212 BC, decades before the mechanism was built, the Roman orator Cicero described a bronze device made by Archimedes that represented accurately by a single device the various and divergent movements of the sun, moon, and the 5 planets. That sounds exactly like the Antikythera Mechanism. Archimedes even wrote a book called Spheres, now lost, which scholars believe described how to build mechanical models of the heavens. Some researchers at UCL believe Archimedes designed the fundamental system, and that the Antikythera Mechanism is a later copy of his original creation. The Romans killed Archimedes in 212 BC, which means his blueprints may have outlived him. Suspect 2, Hipparchus, the greatest astronomer of the 2nd century BC. He operated out of Rhodes, the very island most scholars believe the mechanism was built on. Hipparchus invented plane trigonometry, cataloged the stars, calculated the moon's elliptical orbit with stunning accuracy, and, critically, he blended Greek geometric theory with the arithmetic-based astronomical predictions of the Babylonians. That last point matters deeply, because analysis of the eclipse predictor on the back of the mechanism shows the math is Babylonian in origin, not Greek. Hipparchus is the exact figure who brought those two traditions together. Suspect 3, Posidonius, a philosopher and astronomer who had a workshop on Rhodes in the 1st century BC, right when the ship that carried the mechanism was sailing. Cicero wrote that Posidonius had built a similar model of the heavens. And the ship that sank near Antikythera? It was sailing from Rhodes, carrying plunder toward Rome. The mechanism may have been a gift, a diplomatic treasure, or perhaps it was simply cargo, one of many such devices being produced in Rhodes at the time, before the tradition was wiped out by war and time. Now let's step back. Because the Antikythera Mechanism doesn't exist in a vacuum. When you start connecting the dots, a much bigger picture emerges, the Babylonian connection. The eclipse cycles encoded in the mechanism don't originate in Greece. They were developed by Babylonian astronomers centuries earlier. This tells us that ancient scientific knowledge was transferring across civilizations. Greece was not inventing in isolation. The mechanism is a fusion device. Babylonian astronomy, Greek mathematics, Egyptian calendar systems, all three encoded in one machine, the Library of Alexandria. Here's what we know. Around 300 BC, the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt founded the Library of Alexandria, the greatest repository of human knowledge in the ancient world. It held hundreds of thousands of scrolls. Archimedes studied there. Hipparchus drew on knowledge housed there. When Julius Caesar's forces set fire to part of Alexandria in 48 BC, and when the library was progressively destroyed over the following centuries, what was lost? Could there have been dozens of mechanisms like this one? Could there have been knowledge systems, engineering traditions, astronomical calculators that simply burned? The technology gap. Think about this carefully. The Antikythera Mechanism dates to roughly 100 to 150 BC. The next device of comparable mechanical complexity in the Western world was built by Richard of Wallingford in 14th century England, roughly 1,400 years later. That's not a small gap. That's an entire civilization's worth of technological progress. Erased. What happened? Rome conquered Greece, and while Rome was brilliant at engineering for war and infrastructure, It was not a culture that preserved or advanced abstract scientific instruments. The Roman elite saw Greek science as a curiosity, something to display in their villas, not to develop further. Combined with the fall of Rome, the burning of Alexandria, and centuries of instability, an entire technological tradition simply vanished. The alien theory and why it misses the point. Let's address the elephant in the room. Fringe writer Erich von Däniken famously claimed the Antikythera Mechanism came from an alien spaceship. It doesn't. And here's why that theory is actually an insult to the real story. The mechanism is sophisticated because of centuries of accumulated Greek, Babylonian, and Egyptian scientific tradition. Archimedes, Hipparchus, Euclid, Eudoxus. These were real human minds capable of breathtaking things. The alien theory essentially says, ancient people couldn't have done this. The evidence says otherwise. And frankly, the real story is far more powerful and far more haunting than any alien narrative. The 2025 design flaw revelation. There's one more twist. In 2025, new computer simulations of the mechanism suggested it may have had a fundamental design flaw. The triangular gear teeth could disengage under use, potentially causing the machine to jam after being cranked only 4 months into the future, before needing to be reset. This raises a fascinating possibility. The mechanism we have may not be a fully functional master copy. It could be a prototype, or it could have been repaired and adjusted during its working life. 2,000 years of corrosion make it impossible to say for certain. So here's the question that should keep you up at night. If one mechanism this sophisticated survived, purely by accident, because a ship happened to sink in shallow enough water for divers to eventually reach it, how many others didn't survive? The ancient world was not primitive. It was not a dark age of superstition and ignorance. The Greeks calculated the circumference of the earth. They theorized that the earth moved around the sun. They built mechanical computers. They understood the elliptical orbit of the moon before Newton was born, and nearly all of it was lost. The Antikythera Mechanism isn't just a gadget. It's a message from a civilization that was farther along than we imagined, a civilization that was interrupted. A reminder that progress is not guaranteed, that knowledge is fragile, that an entire tradition of engineering and astronomy can disappear without a trace, leaving only a single corroded lump of bronze at the bottom of the sea to tell the tale. The mechanism is also deeply personal. Whoever built it, whether it was a student of Hipparchus or a craftsman following Archimedes' lost blueprints, they spent months, maybe years, filing each gear tooth by hand. They were trying to hold the universe in their palms. To show people, this is how the sky works. This is when the eclipse will come. This is when the games will be held. They succeeded. And then the world forgot. Until a Greek sponge diver, fighting a storm off a forgotten island, stumbled onto a shipwreck and pulled up a machine that shouldn't exist. The Antikythera Mechanism currently sits in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, Greece. You can visit it. You can look it in the eye, or what's left of it, 82 fragments of corroded bronze that once held the entire cosmos inside a wooden box. And every year, new science peels back another layer. Gravitational wave algorithms, CT scanning, Markov chain statistical modeling. Researchers are still finding new things inside it, 125 years after its discovery. If this video made you look at the ancient world differently, if it made you ask questions you didn't have before, then it did exactly what I wanted it to do. Like and subscribe if you want more videos where we dig into history that doesn't get told. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know, what do you think was on that ship? Who do you think built it? Until next time.